Chapter 11. The Western Mountains. Tenar woke, struggling up from bad dreams, out of places where she had walked so long that all the flesh had fallen from her, and she could see the double white bones of her arms glimmer faintly in the dark. She opened her eyes to a golden light and smelled the pungency of sage. A sweetness came into her as she woke, a pleasure that filled her slowly and wholly till it overflowed, and she sat up, stretching her arms out from the black sleeves of her robe, and looked about her in unquestioning delight. It was evening. The sun was down behind the mountains that loomed close and high to westward, but its afterglow filled all earth and sky, a vast, clear, wintry sky, a vast, barren, golden land of mountains and wide valleys. The wind was down. It was cold and absolutely silent. Nothing moved. The leaves of the sage bushes nearby were dry and gray. The stalks of tiny dried up desert herbs prickled her hand. The huge silent glory of light burned on every twig and withered leaf and stem on the hills in the air. She looked to her left and saw the man lying on the desert ground, his cloak pulled up around him, one arm under his head, fast asleep. His face in sleep was stern, almost frowning, but his left hand lay relaxed on the dirt, beside a small thistle that still bore its ragged cloak of gray fluff and its tiny defense of spikes and spines. The man and the small desert thistle, the thistle and the sleeping man. He was one whose power was akin to and as strong as the old powers of the earth, one who talked with dragons and held off earthquakes with his word. And there he lay, asleep on the dirt, with a little thistle growing by his hand. It was very strange. Living, being in the world, was a much greater and stranger thing than she had ever dreamed. The glory of the sky touched his dusty hair and turned the thistle gold for a little while. The light was slowly fading. As it did so, the cold seemed to grow intenser, minute by minute. Tenar got up and began to gather dry sagebrush, picking up fallen twigs, breaking off the tough branches that grew as gnarled and massive in their scale as the limbs of oaks. They had stopped here about noon, when it was warm, and they could go no farther than for weariness. A couple of stunted junipers and the westward slope of the ridge they had just ascended had offered shelter enough. They had drunk a little water from the flask and lain down and gone to sleep. There was a litter of larger branches under the little trees, which she gathered. Scooping out a pit in an angle of earth-embedded rocks, she built up a fire and lit it with her flint and steel. The tinder of sage leaves and twigs caught at once. Dry branches bloomed into rosy flame, scented with resin. Now it seemed quite dark all around the fire, and the stars were coming out again in the tremendous sky. Okay, here we have that wonderful, beautiful Leguin comma. Dry branches bloomed into rosy flame, scented with resin. That's fine for the sound of it, even though technically that's like a run-on sentence. Dry branches bloomed into flame. We would, I don't know, I would, in my end of the year portfolio stuff, I would be told to rewrite that somehow to where it wasn't a run-on sentence. That wasn't just a comma spot. But man, she loves this stuff. But anyway, now it seemed quite dark, comma, all around the fire, semicolon, and the stars were coming out again in the tremendous sky. I don't know, sometimes I think she just does that. She just does stuff. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. Do you think she's just... What is this? Where is this a separate kind of comment style, comma style? Anyway, let me know in the comments. I call it the Leguin comma. Like how you can have a Shatner. You can have a walking comma, or you can have a Shatner comma. But like an Oxford comma requires that and in there for the series. Anyway, you don't have to have the and in there for a comma. There's different kinds of commas, and I just call this the Leguin comma. And I should not have gone off about it so much here. I know. And I'm glad she puts them in here. She's so liberal with the commas, because it's refreshing to get this much direction. Our language is really wanting. It's really, really wanting for instructions on what to do when you're taking the stuff off of the page. Like, not only are we're using Latin letters, but we're only like a couple steps up on the use of expression from Latin. Like, yeah, we're not using Shavian letters, but even Shavian letters wouldn't help us. Like, there's a lot of information that's just not really conveyed through when you're writing English down. Like looking at Anglo-Saxon runes, it looks like a note from a serial killer or something. Oh, Flabert was here. Okay, Flabert. Cool, you were here, bro. All freaking caps. Jumbled up sometimes, not jumbled up. Norse runes. Thor took a shit here. I'm not sure if that's a real name, but that's a real thing about, like, that's a real graffiti that's from like ages ago. Anyhow, I gotta quit. But yeah, I'm glad she puts in so much information here, but the stuff she does with how the sentence parts go together in English, instead of just making another sentence, she just does this for poetic effect, and I guess it's cool. Maybe we've been dehumanizing our language a little bit, so it's kind of cool. It's nice to drink this fossil water here, but yeah. Anyhow, let's go. They are literally out of the hole. Literally. Now it seemed quite dark all around the fire, and the stars were coming out again in the tremendous sky. The snap and crack of the flames roused the sleeper. He sat up, rubbing his hands over his grimy face, and at last got up stiffly and came close to the fire. "I wonder," he said sleepily. "I know, but we can't last the night here without a fire. It gets too cold." After a minute, she added, "Unless you have some magic that would keep us warm, or that would hide the fire." He sat down by the fire, his feet almost in it, his arms round his knees. "Brr," he said. "Fire is much better than magic. I've put a little illusion about us here. If someone comes by, we might look like sticks and stones to him. What do you think? Will they be following us?" "I fear it. Yet I don't think they will. No one but Castle knew of your being there. Castle and Manon, and they are dead. Surely she was in the hall when it fell. She was waiting at the trapdoor, and the others, the rest, they must think that I was in the hall or the tombs and was crushed in the earthquake. She too put her arms round her knees and shuddered. I hope the other buildings didn't fall. It was hard to see from the hill. There was so much dust. Surely all the temples and houses didn't fall. The big house where all the girls sleep. I think not. It was the tombs that devoured themselves. I saw a gold roof of some temple as we turned away. It still stood. And there were figures down the hill, people running. What will they say? What will they think? Poor Pentha. She might have to become the high priestess of the God King now. It was always she who wanted to run away, not I. Maybe now she'll run away. Tenar smiled. There was a joy in her heart that no thought nor dread could darken. That same sure joy that had risen in her, waking in the golden light. She opened her bag and took out 2 small flat loaves. She handed one across the far to Ged and bit into the other. The bread was tough and sour and very good to eat. They munched together in silence a while. How far are we from the sea? It took me 2 nights and 2 days coming. It'll take us longer going. I'm strong, she said. You are, and valiant. But your companion's tarred, he said, with a smile. And we haven't any too much bread. Will we find water? Tomorrow, in the mountains. Can you find food for us? She asked, rather vaguely and timidly. Hunting takes time and weapons. I meant with, spells. I can call a rabbit, he said, poking the fire with a twisted stick of juniper. The rabbits are coming out of their holes all around us now. Evening's their time. I could call one by name, and he'd come. But would you catch and skin and broil a rabbit that you'd called to you thus? Perhaps if you were starving. But it would be a breaking of trust, I think. Yes, I thought. Perhaps you could just summon up a supper, he said. Oh, I could. On golden plates, if you like. But that's illusion. And when you eat illusions, you end up hungrier than before. It's about as nourishing as eating your own words. She saw his white teeth flash a moment in the firelight. Your magic is peculiar, she said, with a little dignity of equals. Priestess, addressing mage. It appears to be useful only for large matters. He laid more wood on the fire, and it flared up on a juniper-scented fireworks of sparks and crackles. Can you really call a rabbit? Tenar inquired suddenly. Do you want me to? She nodded. He turned away from the fire and said softly into the immense and starlit dark, Kebo, oh Kebo. That's Kebo. Kebbo. Silence. No sound. No motion. Only presently, at the very edge of the flickering firelight, a round eye like a pebble of jet, very near the ground. A curve, a furry back, an ear, long, alert, upraised. Ged spoke again. The ear flicked, gained a sudden partner ear out of the shadow. Then as the little beast turned, Tenar saw it entire for an instant. The small, soft, lithe hop of it returning unconcerned to its business in the night. Ah, she said, letting out her breath. That's lovely. Presently, she asked, could I do that? Well, it is a secret, she said. At once, dignified again. The rabbit's name is a secret. At least, one should not use it lightly, for no reason. But what is not a secret, but rather a gift, or a mystery, do you see, is the power of calling. Oh, she said, that you have. I know. There was a passion in her voice, not hidden by pretended mockery. He looked at her and did not answer. He was indeed still worn out by a struggle against the nameless ones. He had spent his strength in the quaking tunnels. Though he had won, he had little spirit left for exultation. He soon curled up again, as near the fire as he could get, and slept. Tanar sat feeding the fire and watching the blaze of the winter constellations from horizon to horizon until her head grew giddy with splendor and silence, and she dozed off. They both woke. The fire was dead. The stars she had watched were now far over the mountains, and new ones had risen in the east. It was a cold that woke them, the dry cold of the desert night, the wind like a knife of ice. A veil of cloud was coming over the sky from the southwest. The gathered firewood was almost gone. "Let's walk," Ged said. "It's not long till dawn." His teeth chattered so that she could hardly understand him. They set out, climbing the long, slow slope westward. The bushes and rocks showed black in starlight, and it was easy to walk as in the day. After a cold first while, the walking warmed them. They stopped crouching and shivering and began to go easier. So by sunrise, they were on the first rise of the western mountains, which had walled in Tanar's life till then. They stopped in a grove of trees whose golden, quivering leaves still clung to the boughs. He told her they were aspens. She knew no trees but juniper and the sickly poplars by the river springs and the 40 apple trees of the orchard of the place. A small bird among the aspens said, "Dee, dee," in a small voice. Under the trees ran a stream, narrow but powerful, shouting, muscular over its rocks and falls, too hasty to freeze. Tanar was almost afraid of it. She was used to the desert, where things are silent and move slowly. Sluggish rivers, shadows of clouds, vultures encircling. They divided a piece of bread and a last crumbling bit of cheese for breakfast, rested a little, and went on. By evening, they were up high. It was overcast and windy. Freezing weather. They camped in the valley of another stream, where there was plenty of wood, and this time built up a sturdy fire of logs by which they could keep fairly warm. Tanar was happy. She had found a squirrel's cache of nuts, exposed by the falling of a holler tree, a couple pounds of fine walnuts, and a smooth-shelled kind that Ged not knowing the Kargish name called Ubir. She cracked them one by one between a flat stone and a hammer stone, and handed every second nut meat to the man. "I wish we could stay here," she said, looking down at the windy twilit valley between the hills. "I like this place." "This is a good place," he agreed. "People would never come here. Not often. I was born in the mountains," he said. "On the mountain of Gaunt. We shall pass it, sailing to Havnor, if we take the northern way. We shall pass it, sailing to Havnor." Wait, whoa. "Not often. I was born in the mountains," he said. "On the mountain of Gaunt. We shall pass it, sailing to Havnor, if we take the northern way. It's beautiful to see it in winter, rising all white out of the sea, like a greater wave. My village was by just such a stream as this one." "Where were you born, Tenar?" "In the north of Ottawan and Entot, I think. I can't remember it." "They took you so young?" "I was 5. I remember a fire on the hearth and nothing else." He rubbed his jaw, which, though it had acquired a sparse beard, was at least clean, despite the cold. Both of them had washed in the mountain streams. He rubbed his jaw and looked thoughtful and severe. She watched him, and never could she have said what was in her heart as she watched him. In the firelight, in the mountain dusk. "What are you going to do in Havnor?" he said, asking the question of the fire, not of her. "You are more than I had realized, truly reborn." She nodded, smiling a little. She felt newborn. "You should learn the language, at least." "Your language?" "Yes, I'd like to." "Well then, this is Kabat." And he tossed a little stone into the lap of her black robe. Kabat. That was Kabat. Kabat. Is that in the dragon tongue? No. You don't want to work spells. You want to talk with other men and women. But what is a pebble in the dragon's tongue? Tolk, he said. But I'm not making you my apprentice sorcerer. I'm teaching you the language people speak in the archipelago, the inner lands. I had to learn your language before I came here. You speak it oddly. Now, no doubt. Now, Arkemi Kabat. And he held out his hands for her to give him the pebble. Must I go to Havnor? She said. Where else would you go, Tenar? She hesitated. Havnor is a beautiful city, he said. And you bring it the ring, the sign of peace, the lost treasure. They'll welcome you in Havnor as a princess. They'll do you honor for the great gift you bring them, and bid you welcome, and make you welcome. They are a noble and generous people in that city. They'll call you the White Lady because of your fair skin, and they'll love you the more because you are so young and because you are beautiful. You'll have 100 dresses like the one I showed you by illusion, but real ones. You'll meet with praise and gratitude and love. You have known nothing but solitude and envy and the dark. There was Manon, she said, defensive, her mouth trembling just a little. He loved me and was kind to me always. He protected me as well as he knew how, and I killed him for it. He fell into the black pit. I don't want to go to Havnor. I don't want to go there. I want to stay here. Here? In Ottawa? In the mountains, where we are now. Tenar, he said in his grave, quiet voice, we'll stay then. I haven't my knife, and if it snows, it will be hard. But so long as we can find food... No, I know we can't stay. I'm merely being foolish, Tenar said, and got up, scattering walnut shells to lay new wood on the fire. She stood thin and very straight in her torn, dirt-stained gown and cloak of black. All I know is of no use now, she said. And I haven't learned anything else. I'll try to learn. Ged looked away, wincing as if in pain. Next day they crossed the summit of the Tawny Range. In the pass, a hard wind blew, with snow in it, stinging and blinding. It was not until they had come down a long way on the other side, out from under the snow clouds of the peaks, that Tenar saw the land beyond the mountain wall. It was all green. Green of pines, of grasslands, of sown fields, and fallows. Even in the dead of winter, when the thickets were bare and the forest full of gray boughs, it was a green land, humble and mild. They looked down on it from a high, rocky slant of the mountainside. Wordless, Ged pointed to the west, where the sun was getting low behind a thick cream and royal of clouds. The sun itself was hidden, but there was a glitter on the horizon, almost like the dazzle of the crystal walls of the undertombs. A kind of joyous shimmering off on the edge of the world. "What is that?" the girl said, and he, "The sea." It's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Shortly afterward, she saw a less wonderful thing than that, but wonderful enough. They came on a road and followed it, and it brought them by dusk into a village. 10 or a dozen houses strung along the road. She looked at her companion in alarm when she realized that they were coming among men. She looked and did not see him. Beside her, in Ged's clothing and with his gait and in his shoes, strode another man. He had a white skin and no beard. He glanced at her. His eyes were blue. He winked. "Will I fool 'em?" he said. "How are your clothes?" She looked down at herself. She had on a countrywoman's brown skirt and jacket, and a large red woolen shawl. "Oh," she said, stopping short. "Oh, you are Ged." As she said his name, she saw him perfectly clearly. The dark, scarred face she knew, the dark eyes. Yet there stood the milk-faced stranger. "Don't say my true name before others, nor will I say yours." "We are brother and sister, come from Tenakba, and I think I'll ask for a bite of supper if I see a kindly face." He shook her hand and they entered the village. They left it next morning with full stomachs after a pleasant sleep in a hayloft. "Do mages often beg?" asked Tenar on the road between green fields where goats and little spotted cattle grazed. "Why do you ask? You seemed used to begging. In fact, you were good at it." "Well, yeah. I've begged all my life, if you look at it that way. Wizards don't own much, you know. In fact, nothing but their staff and clothing if they wander. They are received and given food and shelter by most people gladly. They do make some return. What return? Well, that woman in the village, I cured her goats. What was wrong with them? They both had infected udders. I used to herd goats when I was a boy. Did you tell her you'd cured them? No. How could I? Why should I? After a pause, she said, I see your magic is not good only for large things. Hospitality, he said. Kindness to a stranger, that's a very large thing. Thanks are enough, of course. But I was sorry for the goats. In the afternoon, they came by a large town. It was built of clay brick and walled around in the Kargish fashion, with overhanging battlements, watchtowers at the four corners, and a single gate under which drovers were herding a big flock of sheep. The red tile roofs of 100 or more houses poked up over the walls of yellowish brick. At the gate stood 2 guards in the red-plumed helmets of the God King's service. Tenar had seen men in such helmets come once a year or so to the place, escorting offerings of slaves or money to the God King's temple. When she told Ged that, as they passed by outside the walls, he said, I saw them too, as a boy. They came raiding to Gaunt. They came into my village to plunder it, but they were driven off. And there was a battle down by Armouth on the shore. Many men were killed, hundreds, they say. Perhaps now that the ring is rejoined and the lost rune remade, there will be no more such raiding and killing between the Kargish Empire and the Inner Lands. It would be foolish if such things went on, said Tenar. What would the God King ever do with so many slaves? Her companion appeared to ponder this a while. If the Kargish lands defeated the archipelago, you mean? She nodded. I don't think that would be likely to happen. But look how strong the empire is. That great city, with its walls and all its men. How could your land stand against them if they attacked? That is not a very big city, he said cautiously and gently. I too would have thought it tremendous when I was new from my mountain. But there are many, many cities in Earthsea, among which this is only a town. There are many, many lands. You will see them, Tenar. She said nothing. She trudged along the road, her face set. It is marvelous to see them. The new lands rising from the sea as your boat comes towards them. The farmlands and forests, the cities with their harbors and palaces, the marketplaces where they sell everything in the world. She nodded. She knew he was trying to hearten her, but she had left joy up in the mountains, in the twilit valley of the stream. There was a dread in her now that grew and grew. All that lay ahead of her was unknown. She knew nothing but the desert and the tombs. What good was that? She knew the turnings of a ruined maze. She knew the dances danced before a fallen altar. She knew nothing of forests or cities or the hearts of men. She said suddenly, "Will you stay with me there?" She did not look at him. He was in his illusory disguise, a white-skinned Kargish countryman, and she did not like to see him so. But his voice was unchanged, the same voice that had spoken in the darkness of the labyrinth. He was slow to answer. "Tenor, I go where I'm sent. I follow my calling. It has not yet led me to stay in any land for long. Do you see that? I do what I must do. Where I go, I must go alone. So long as you need me, I'll be with you in Havnor. And if you ever need me again, call me. I will come. I would come from my grave if you called me, Tenor. But I cannot stay with you." She said nothing. After a while he said, "You will not need me long there. You'll be happy." She nodded, accepting, silent. They went on side by side toward the sea. Oh. Thank you. Thank you.